Serenbe is a place where people live, work, learn, and play in celebration of life's beauty. And we're here to share the stories that connect residents and guests to each other and to nature. This is Serenbe Stories. Today, we're talking with Terry Lin, the co-founder of Outer. It's the first direct-to-consumer, fully recyclable outdoor furniture line that's based out of California. We interviewed Terry last fall, 2019, as the company's furniture line was ramping up for an appearance on Shark Tank. We talked about recycling, innovation, and how he came to create a company that exemplifies both, alongside sustainability. After the COVID pandemic set in, we reached out to hear how Outer was faring in this economic climate. So stick around for the second part of the episode where Terry shares how a renewed appreciation for spending time outside and at home has increased interest in their product line. Despite the hurdles all businesses are facing right now, he's hopeful that Outer furniture will continue trending up. Enjoy this episode and stick around for both parts. But first, Serenbe Stories is brought to you by The Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on the wraparound porch. Play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. So hello, everybody. I want to welcome everybody back to Serenbe Stories. Steve Niger and I are back in the recording studio, otherwise known as our conference room. And today, we're very excited to have Terry Lin here from Outer Furniture. So Steve and Terry, welcome.
Welcome, Terry. Thank you for having me.
You may not have heard of Outer Furniture. It's been around for 8 months now? I think it's been out.
Yeah, we launched this past spring.
Perfect. And Terry is the co-founder, and Outer is a direct consumer furniture line. 100% sustainable. Is that fair to say?
That's right. 100% recyclable.
Why are you here, Terry? What's going on? How did we bring you into our circle?
Yeah, we were really fortunate because we crossed paths because we shared the same PR agency. And, as our agency got to know us, they said, you have to go talk to Serenbe because, as we've learned about Outer, like the values that you talk about align so closely what Serenbe is all about.
I love that. I know Steve and I are always looking for common sense solutions.
I was going to say, that's your furniture, it's incredible, and it is. So this is your first visit to Serenbe. How aligned do you feel it is after walking the streets?
I certainly have always had biases. I grew up in suburbs of Delaware, and now I live in San Francisco, and, when I go visit family, it's usually like in suburbs of somewhere. And, there is a look that I have in my mind's eye that I kind of thought about. And, Corinne, our head of marketing, came and was just talking about how amazing Serenbe was. So, I was like, okay, it looks pretty cool. And when I actually came here, I came at night, so I didn't see much, but I can say, the way I was greeted, it was a little kitten named Meow Meow. And I was like, wow, I know this is going to be a good trip. And then, I got up early this morning. I walked among the farm animals, and then I got to see the architecture and got to hear a lot more about it. And it really has blown my mind. The word that I think of is magical. And it is not a word that I would normally associate when I think of about a planned community. And just as I think about what's happening with this country and the whole new urbanism, this is such a perfect example of how it should be done. So just incredibly impressed.
Well, that's a real compliment coming from a creative person like you. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, so your background is pretty impressive. You went to RISD, which is the Rhode Island School of Design,
That's right?
And then did you immediately go there to San Francisco and work for Pottery Barn?
Yeah, so as soon as I graduated, I moved out to San Francisco. I wanted to work for industrial design consulting companies, and the company that I most wanted to work for is called IDEO. Mm-hmm. And they said, if you want to work here, you have to move out here. So I moved out sight unseen. When I got to the airport, I had a 20-piece set of plates and a backpack for backpacking and a guitar.
That's all.
And that speaks a little bit about the things I cared about backpacking, because I wanted to go backpacking in the Sierras. The 20-piece set, because I couldn't pass up a great deal at the department store at the time, and in my love of like the home and the comforts of home. And guitar, because I just like music. But I got to the airport and I asked how to get in the city. And that was the start of when I started living in the Bay Area.
That's amazing. What neighborhood do you live in San Francisco?
I live in the outer sunset of San Francisco, so right by the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's great. And so how long were you at IDEO?
So it took me 8 years to get to IDEO. My first interview was my first year there, and I showed them my portfolio, and they were like fancy looking designers in my interview. And they looked at my first case study, and then they flipped faster and faster and faster, and they pushed it back. The interview lasted maybe 5 minutes.
Oh no.
And they said, come back when you have relevant experience.
Oh.
And so at that point, it was really about developing that relevant experience. And, my first job was a $5 an hour internship at a one-man design firm.
Okay.
And that eventually led to me 8 years later getting to IDEO.
Okay.
So
now, was Pottery Barn along the way, or was Pottery Barn post IDEO?
So, the whole idea of industrial design is that you do product development and you know how to bring products to market. And I realized in the 8 years that I was doing consulting, consulting is all about like coming up with really cool ideas, presenting even cooler presentations. But when it comes to like, okay, great, we love it, go make it. If they ever asked that, which they never did, I would not have the foggiest idea how to make anything.
That's interesting.
I would know how to design something, but if it comes to manufacturability, I didn't know. So I realized, as I wanted to progress in my career, it was about how do I not only come up with good ideas, but actually how to bring them to market as well. And that landed me at Pottery Barn, where I knew that I would be developing product that would be in the market in 12 months. And I would know quickly if, my designs were successful or not based on the sales. So,
right.
So Pottery Barn came after my time of consulting, and the last consulting company I worked at was IDEO, and then I jumped over to the client side and spent another 8 years at the Williams-Sonoma brand. So it was Pottery Barn Teen, and then Pottery Barn, the main brand, learning how to design furniture.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so the hard goods today, right? That makes sense that outer is where sort of you landed. Did you have any other in between? I think you did a little bit of e-commerce.
I did. So I've had a bunch of twists and turns in like my career path. I did some consulting after Pottery Barn with Calvin Klein, helping them try to develop their entire furniture line. After that, I actually went to Walmart e-commerce, which
Interesting.
Was like a complete diversion detour of my career. I went there kind of leveraging a lot of what I did in my past with IDEO, which is like design strategy. And while I was at my first role at Walmart e-commerce it was a skunkworks team. And the mandate was that, they say we're a $466 billion company. What is it going to take for us to get to $1 trillion company? And if you think about Walmart and all the things they do sell everything from birth to death. So from diapers to caskets.
Wow.
And everything in between. So they've got, like services. They've got everything. So it was a great time because I really wanted to get back to like what I cared about. So to go back a little bit, when I was at Calvin Klein trying to develop their line, one of the pieces of furniture was a $20,000 bed.
Wow.
Exactly. That was my reaction to wow. And then, the question I asked myself is, who needs a $20,000 bed? And the answer I came up with was nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody needs a $20,000 bed. It's not going to extend your life. It's not going to actually give you more joy. A bed makes it, is supposed to be comfortable. So it came down to no one really needs a $20,000 bed. The people that own $20,000 beds just have too much money and they don't know where to spend it. And, as I think about my career, I actually wanted to do something where I'm actually solving problems. And I realized I really wasn't solving problems. And I was feeling bad about myself. Like, I'm going down this path where it's such a materialistic direction. I need to change. And at the time, I actually was living in New York City. Okay. And my wife and I moved there. She changed careers, was changing from finance to healthcare. And she was going to be a midwife.
Oh, wow.
But basically, while we were there, we realized our lives were on hold. We moved back to San Francisco. I got this job at Walmart. So you can imagine the household income of someone that can afford a $20,000 bed versus the average household income of a Walmart customer, which is like $40,000. Right. So I was actually quite excited because anything I was doing in terms of thinking about services, products, solutions would have a profound impact on people.
Sure.
So that's actually why I joined.
Lots of people.
Lots of people. So going back to like, how do you actually solve problems? A lot of what I was doing was thinking about like what the problem is with these customers, unbanked customers, parents who want a better life for their kids. These parents that didn't have college degrees, hoping that their kids would get college degrees. So those are the things that I was thinking about. So I was thinking about like education. I was thinking about technology to get access for these customers to additional services. I mean, there was certainly a portion that had to do with revenue, which was with Walmart, like the average customer that goes in the store goes once a week. Okay. But for the online customer, it is like 1.2 times a year. So there's lots of great problems to solve.
Oh, okay.
Did that for a while, eventually moved over to the business side and was working on the business, thinking about how to hit revenue numbers, thinking about the data and analytics and how to actually make sure we hit those numbers. And it was a good experience, but not really what I was passionate about. Right. So eventually that led me to move on. I did some time at Casper, which is a direct-to-consumer outdoor furniture, direct-to-consumer mattress brand. And I won't talk about that too much, but basically like my experiences with mass retail to specialty retail to lifestyle retail to direct-to-consumer led me to like realizing there was an opportunity with everything I learned to start Outer.
Right. Well, and I think throwing stuff up in the air and rethinking how consumers buy product, right? All this direct to consumer that's been happening with Casper and then all these furniture companies, but maybe you're the first outdoor furniture company that's doing it.
Yeah. So as Jake Liu, my co-founder, when we started talking, there's a big insight that we came up with, which was if you look at these companies that are disrupting these incumbents, they're doing it in these sleepy categories, these categories where companies have been around for, 20, 30, 40 years and they're used to doing it a certain way and they can't change it because of shareholders and what shareholders demand. And, like once you start looking into it, you realize there's a lot of excess that's happening in these businesses. So it's not hard to disrupt an industry. So what's exciting about a mattress?
Right.
Not a whole lot. What's exciting about socks? What's exciting about
toothbrushes,
eyeglasses, you name it. There's all these categories. So, as Jake and I were talking, we got to outdoor furniture, and the first question we asked was, what brands can you think of when you think of outdoor furniture? And most people can't actually think of a brand. They'll think of lifestyle retailers, but they can't actually name a brand. And there certainly are brands out there that have been around many years. But what they haven't done is applied like a different approach to design, marketing, and branding. And what we realized was even though we were a challenger brand, the playing field was level. So for us to be able to become like top of mind in the category, it wasn't that far-fetched. So that's what we really focused on, which is there is no brands. We want to be the brand that customers think when they think outdoor furniture.
That's great.
So for those who have not seen it, can you describe, what's your passion piece? What does it look like? What does it do?
Yeah. So, the outer that we started with, we say the perfect and the most comfortable outdoor sofa. And it's quite different the way we're doing it. And I am like taking a lot of the learnings from Casper, which is do one thing, do it really well. Take your time when you design it. As you design this brand, it's so that you have the right and the permission to design that next product. You've developed the trust. You've developed, a base where people know like the way you think about how you design is very thoughtful. So our design, I like to think it's actually quite like refined. It's restrained. There's nothing that I would say is super flashy about it. Maybe our legs are flashy because our legs are cast stainless steel. But, the design itself is, I like to think it's timeless, so that anytime I'm designing anything that is of value or expensive, I think 10 years. It's almost like a tattoo. Like when you get a tattoo, like the best way to think about it is in 10 years, am I going to be happy with what I actually put on my body? And if you're not, then you probably shouldn't do it. Same thing with furniture. Like as you design that piece of furniture, you don't want it to be dateable. You want it to be timeless. Right. So like the design is transitional in nature. It's a modular design so that it helps us in that it's configurable in many ways. So like it simplifies our supply chain. So we basically have 2 SKUs that can be configured into multiple configurations. It's a shelter arm design, which it's done that way so that it can be configurable. Shelter arm design means the arm and the back are the same height. Made sure to design it so that the height is comfortable for both leaning back, but also putting your arm on. I've designed the depth of it to be, I have a golden rule about what the dimension should be from like your heel to back of knee to like your hip. And there is a number that I designed to a range that actually helps with comfort for someone from like 5'3" to like 6 feet. But the design is a shelter arm design that's modular. It's an all-weather wicker sofa. The color of the sofa of the wicker is, I'd like to think of it as a sun-bleached teak. And it comes in 2 colors. It comes in a gray and a white. And a lot of what we've talked about when we designed it was we don't want choice overload.
Yes.
Choice overload is choose this, then choose this, and then choose this. And at that point, like when you have 15 fabrics or 20 fabrics, no one knows what to do. So we just wanted to try to minimize it for the customer to make it easy, but also for us in terms of our not having too much of a supply chain issue.
That's
an
great.
Inventory management issue.
And for outside furniture, I love the way you've built in the covers. Is that new? Has anyone else ever done that?
No. So I should have brought that up. It's funny that I forgot to mention that. So, the way we designed the furniture before we actually sketched it, we asked customers that owned outdoor furniture, how often do they use it? And the answers that we got was once or twice on the weekends or a few times a month. And that was about it. And very little on the weekdays. And then the next question was why? And the answers we got was, look at it. It's gross. See that bird poop there? It just happened. And now like there's the other bird poop from the week before. I need to clean my furniture before I even want to sit on it. So like, that is a project that is in my backlog of things to do. The second is that there's a cover on it. So to uncover it, it actually takes time. And if I want to go out for 5 minutes before my day starts in the morning and have a cup of coffee, the effort's too much to actually take it off and then put it back on. And the last is that for many, they will actually take their cushions and store them inside in their garage, in their basement, in a hallway, in a storage shed. So to actually take the effort to do the 3 trips to put your cushions out was far too much. So we realized, where we focused on comfort, there was a bigger issue with protection, which is protection today was a barrier to actually being able to enjoy your outdoors. So that was kind of one of the requirements when we were at our factory designing it. And surprisingly, when Jake and I were there, we said, we know we want to do something. And I asked one of the workers to cut me a piece of non-woven fabric, the width of the chair or the cushion. And then I told them a certain length. And then I just started playing. I took some office, those binder clips, and I started playing and I clipped it on. It's like, it's going to be something like this. And that was the seed of the idea we've captured on film.
Oh, that's great.
And, we finally refined it, got it to what we thought made sense. After we did that part, we realized it'd be great if we were able to carry it off like a suitcase. Because typically when you carry cushions off, it's like a pizza box. Like, So it's just unwieldy to do. So if you can carry it off like a suitcase, you can do multiple trips in one trip. So it really was like rapid prototyping and designing like on the fly. We brought it back to the US. We socialized it with our friends and investors and family. Everyone loved it. And it was amazing to see like the light bulb go off in people's heads. Like, oh my God, that's exactly what I need. And then, so that's the most common thing we hear. And then the other thing we hear is, why didn't I think of that? And it's because it's not that hard. It truly is a zipper on a piece of fabric with some Velcro. So when people saw that, they said, you need to go see if you can get this patented. And, we weren't actually going down that path. And, we did. We did a patent search and found out no one's ever done anything like this, which was like amazing to us because how simple it was. That no one thought of this. And it just highlights the fact of, furniture, that a lot of what we do is copying what other people have done. And like any industry, like it's like, how do you actually break the norm and actually think a little bit differently? And then, Steve, as we talked about common sense, like there's so much about common sense that we fail to actually think about. And as we're designing these things, it was common sense thinking about how we did this.
And it looks so great just sitting there covered.
Yeah. It was a simple solution.
Great design.
And you'll actually use your furniture now.
Exactly.
One of the things I know you told me was about the materials. And so you had said at one point that you felt like you were a material scientist.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because it was very important to you, not only the fabric, but everything on there had to be recyclable.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about, because you had not worked in textiles before. Sure. So tell me about that process.
Yeah. Well, so like the backstory is I have a 5.5-year-old and a 9-month-old. And we see every other day about the doom and gloom of what's happening with plastics. And I think they say by 2050, the plastics in the ocean are going to outweigh the fish. And, there is basically microplastics in every fish in the ocean today. Mm-hmm. And that's just a really startling statistic. And, as we're designing this outdoor furniture, like there's very little that can withstand all that nature has to throw it at us. And the thing that can withstand it is, unfortunately, plastics. Like, I think they say the first piece of plastic that was ever created is still around today, because I think it takes 450 years to break down.
So depressing.
So, like, knowing that we are going to be working with this material because we have to, our next thing was we have to make sure that we are using plastics that are the most commonly recycled. Mm-hmm. So as we started thinking about materials palette, I did research on the international recycle codes, 1 through 7. And then from there, looking at what materials would actually work for what we were designing. Mm-hmm. And it ended up that we could work with recycle codes 2, 4, and 5. So it's polypropylene, high density polyethylene, and low density polyethylene. That's what we stuck with. Mm-hmm. And, from there, as I started designing the product, the next part we looked at was the fabric. And we wanted to design a premium product. And, this happened a little bit later, but I wanted to use all premium brands. And there are 2 premium brands out there.
Yep.
And both premium brands use a solution dyed acrylic. It's a great material. It withstands fading for 5 years, but it actually fell into recycle code 7. So it didn't fall into our 2, 4, and 5. And recycle code 7 is a catch-all for all of those plastics that most of your waste management companies won't recycle. So it will end up in a landfill. And it's because to actually get it back to like a virgin state is too expensive. So because of that, it was a force mechanism for us to say, well, we actually need to design our own fabrics. And then it was like another education for me to learn all about textile design. It took almost a year to design our fabrics, but we started with basically a polypropylene.
Right.
And then from there, we had to figure out how to make sure that it could actually withstand the same fade resistance as the other premium brands. And then from there, we had other requirements that we wanted to have, the hand feel of linen and the slub that you see when you think of artisanal quality fabrics. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was these are what I wanted. These are the things that I want to do. How do we actually do it?
Right.
So it was a lot of trial and error, talking to textile makers, making some hand samples of these weaves and like rejecting, revising, and, eventually we got to what we needed to get to. And I'm that much smarter on textiles design.
Well, and I think you'd said that it took you something like 8 months just for the fabric, or, you really spent the time. And that reminds me a bit of, when Steve would tell me stories about, the lampposts, nobody would let him do the lampposts he wanted. He wanted him to be, if you will, artisanal lampposts. Yeah. And so you waited until they would approve it. And when they wanted to trench, to put in, I don't know what, electricity or utilities, they wanted to take down 20 feet of trees on either side, but he waited until somebody could come with the right trencher that didn't have to do that. And I think that is something that people don't do these days. So I totally commend you for like looking for the solution, waiting for the right solution, and not just doing the easy answer with, again, beautiful, fabulous materials that exist, but you actually created something new.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what we are doing at our company is like we talk about our values and we want to live our values. And the last thing we want to do is like, if we talk about wanting to be sustainable, like if we're not doing it, then we're not going to do it. And we need to either not do it or find a new way of doing it. And that's where, where we need to partner or figure out new ways of developing better materials out there that are more sustainable, more eco-friendly. And
you were going to tell me about a concrete too. That was really interesting. That I think you'll be interested. I don't know. I kept thinking can we build a artist cottage out of it?
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of when we started Outer, it's taking us on this journey of these twists and turns that we would have never thought about. So for the concrete, there's a limited palette that I believe works in the outdoors, and it's, for wood, it's teak. I don't believe other woods are actually, there's like ipe, there's very few woods, but teak is the one that I like the most. There's aluminum because it doesn't corrode. There's stainless steel. There is all weather wicker. There is basically plastic, and then there's ceramic, maybe glass too, I guess, but basically, and the concrete. So when we were thinking about like our palette, concrete is like a color. It's a material that is like long lasting and durable. We wanted to use it just because it kind of fits our aesthetic. As I've been thinking about tabletop, like as I think about like our product development strategy, it's that it solves a problem. There's some sort of innovation to it where and it's sustainable. So it's like 1, 2, or 3. We have to actually solve all 3 of those things, or at least 2 of them. So I've been hesitant to actually design any type of tabletop thing. So whether it's an accent table, a coffee table, a dining table, and it's because there really are no problems with any of those things. They function as needed. You put something on it, as long as it doesn't fall off, then it's good, right? So, we know it's a big category. We know that, people would buy it, but for us to design something just didn't feel right without actually doing that. So I've spent the past year thinking about what we would do. And, where we landed was there may not be a lot of innovation with, like a pain point, but there is an innovation that we can do with sustainability and durability. So, we're going down this path where we're working with a partner to develop a unique concrete that is very different than all the other concretes out there. So the most common concrete out there is Portland cement. And then, prior to that, the concrete that they used to make was called a magnesia cement. It's the same cements that were used to make like the Great Wall of China or the stupas of India.
Wow.
And they moved away from it because it's too expensive. And you can imagine, like with all the development going on globally, they needed to find a better solution. So that's where we started, which is magnesia cement. Because it's basically half of the carbon footprint of Portland cement because of like how it's made.
That's interesting.
Lighter in weight, stronger in like weight per strength. But that's only part of it. So if you look at concrete, it is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases and the carbon footprint in this world. You can imagine how much concrete is getting made. So okay, we want to figure out at least if we're going to do this, because it makes sense because it's durable, how can we do it? So we are working on a formulation of concrete that actually captures CO2.
Amazing.
So, like the whole point is how do we, like everything we do is how do you actually limit our carbon footprint? And with what we're doing, it actually makes it carbon neutral.
It's like a tree.
At least their size. It's
so
like a tree.
What are you doing? What are the components that allow that to happen?
So, I mean, it's a magnesium oxide, and there's another component to it that
a secret
we
component?
can't talk about yet. But like, as we do this, it's that, yes, you're right. It's like the whole idea, like, we always hear that the lungs are the trees are the lungs of the earth.
Yes.
What are other things out there? Like we know that there's like deforestation going on. Mm-hmm. We are trying to plant trees, but can you actually use buildings to do it? So as we do this, it was really a test to be like, we're a small company trying something that we know, like there's big conglomerates that are saying, no, you're not going to do this. And we don't have to worry about that. Like, we don't know any better, but we just want to try to be a role model to be like, this is how we think we should do it. And the whole idea of like the butterfly effect, which is, one small company, if they can do it, we have limited resources. It just can show like big companies can do it too. And kind of like the whole thing with like these direct to consumer brands that are coming out, they're realizing there's a lot of margin that can be had. And with these big producers of cement, they're like, if we do it, we know it's going to cost more. It's going to cost more and we're going to have to charge about the same. So we're going to lose out on this. So like they are foregoing like caring for the planet over profits. Yeah. And I think, at a certain point, like as we do this, it's like hopefully like this loud, our little mouse voice turns into like a loud roar and it changes the way people think about things.
Yeah.
And people are starting to buy according to that. I mean,
exactly.
We need to start really looking at true costs of things. And so if it's
long-term costs,
that's right, long-term costs.
Yes.
So if it's negative on the planet, if it's negative on planet health or on individual health, we should start looking at how we charge for that.
Exactly. I think, like this short-term thinking needs to stop. And, like anyone with kids, like my values changed when I had kids. And it's like, where we're going, like everything I need to do, I have 8 years to figure out how to actually, teach them what I know, hopefully get them on the right path to be able to make wise decisions so that as they get older to make their own formulations of the world and what they need to do, that they can do this. So like, it's just kind of like, how do we start getting people to think that way? And then for my kids, it's like that long-term thinking, which is, I ask myself, am I leaving this world a better place or a worse place for my child, my children, and future generations? And if we all ask that same question, I think we would make different choices.
That's right. And no one has asked those questions in the last several decades.
Exactly. So like, again, like a small company, but at least we're trying to be role models of like how you think responsibility as a brand.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love if you'll just share your mission with us, which I think is great because your mission isn't about creating furniture. Your mission is something different. Yeah. So like
I'll start back like, as I talk to like friends, customers, like and investors, I ask them a question. I say, where were you on 4th of July of this past year? And they typically were at a barbecue as most people are. My next question is, do you remember what you were eating? Probably like burgers, hot dogs, maybe a steak. Do you remember who you're talking to? Yeah. Okay. I had a great conversation with so-and-so. And then I asked, do you remember what you were sitting on? And like, no, I don't know what I was sitting on. I'm like, that's the point. It's like, yes, we are trying to create great furniture that is durable and is comfortable. But in the end, people aren't going to think about it. And, any great design kind of blends in the background. And really what matters is those experiences that you enable. And, as we think about our company, like what we care about is like, we talk about like creating adventures in your backyard. Like getting outside is hard for a lot of people. There's that statistic of Americans spend 93% of their lives indoors. And indoors is where all the free radicals are. It's where your cells break down, you get sick. Being outside, being barefoot on the earth, where it's a big negatively charged ion, where it reduces stress, it improves your immune system, it changes the viscosity of your blood. So like we just want people to get outside, whether it be a minute or 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. Like start little and then, build up. It's not about getting into national parks. Yes, we would love you to get there, but it's about baby steps. And all we care about is getting people outside to start with. And, it comes back to like my childhood, and I'm sure people in my age, their childhoods, of how much time they spent outside. And it's because we didn't have alternatives. We didn't have devices. We didn't have instant on-demand anything. We had a TV that I watched Saturday morning cartoons from like 8 to 10. But after that, I didn't want to watch all the other stuff. So I would play outside because this is what I wanted to do. And there's just too much choice out there today. And there's too much that kids are so interested in doing that actually I'm trying to, be a role model for my kid. And I should say more of an experiment, because I fail all the time, of getting them outside more.
Well, that's great. Is there anything else that you want to share with us about Outer? Besides that, we should all go sit on it. Oh, we know what we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about the neighborhood showrooms.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, I guess that's the main reason that you showed up here originally.
That's right.
Is that Serenbe had the original neighborhood showroom for Atlanta. You also opened one, I believe, in Sandy Springs, maybe Decatur.
A couple of them, yeah.
And I think we're going to open another one here. But that is your other set of innovation.
Yes.
And so tell us that as we wrap up this conversation. It's phenomenal.
Neighborhood showroom is our response to like physical retail. We know that our product is a high price point, and with a high price point plus a new brand, you're not going to trust them. So it's important to be able to see, touch, and feel this. And our option was to open up a store, and basically we immediately wrote that off because we didn't have the money to do it. The other option was to figure out another way. And what we've done is created this peer-to-peer neighborhood showroom network where we crowdsource from our customers who become hosts. And in doing so, potential customers can come see, touch, and feel the furniture before they decide to buy. And then on top of that, the whole idea of connection and community, like, you're going to trust your neighbor, your friend, more than you're going to trust a salesperson.
Yeah. I love it. And it's working. You've been open 8 months and you have 3,000 inquiries.
We have 3,000 applicants.
That's amazing.
And we are being thoughtful of how we roll this out, but we're really excited about like being able to actually get it across the country.
Okay, perfect. And we need to go to
www.liveouter.com.
Perfect.
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Love seeing your furniture about in our various open spaces.
I know.
It looks great here.
I know. We'll have to get more.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and we look forward to hearing more about your success.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck with the venture.
Stay tuned for the second part of the episode after this message from our sponsor. There are 2 rubrics in building a city. You can follow the sprawl mentality, or you can preserve land while boosting economic development. Serenbe builds and designs to be both beautiful and environmentally sustainable. If you're a city planner, developer, landowner, or policymaker, there are common sense solutions you can take to build a biophilic-centered community. Attend the Nigran Placemaking Conference this fall to learn more. Details at nigranplacemaking.com. That's NYGRENPLACEMAKING.com. All right. So Terry, thank you so much for joining us again and taking time out of your busy schedule to kind of come back and tell us sort of what's happened since we recorded in the fall that everybody just listened to. And I think the biggest thing, well, there's 2 big things, obviously. There's the pandemic that has affected all of us. But one of the interesting things that you mentioned was Shark Tank. And so now we can hear what happened.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Terry. Good to check in with you in this interesting time in all of our lives.
I know. I live in a pretty small house with an even smaller backyard. And, I know I can't imagine like how lucky you are in Serenbe and all of the extra space you have. Like, sure, I think you have plenty of space to do some social distancing. So you're really lucky and fortunate to be where you are.
It really is. It shows you how the way the community's built is for times like this, or the way we generally live isn't nearly as much of an eruption. It was really fun this weekend. A 9-year-old, I think Tucker's 9 maybe. He had a birthday, and of course, none of the things you could do. And so his folks decorated their golf cart and drove it down the street and let everyone know. And everyone was on their porch in their front yard waving and hollering happy birthday. And it was really kind of a special thing that the setup with the porches in the streets, it was real easy to do that.
So there's an article about porch in place. So, there's shelter in place, and now there's porch in place that I've heard of, where there are people that have skills, whether they're, playing instruments like guitars or a banjo, where they're actually doing things on their porch to entertain their neighbors. So I could see it being, like a big part of Serenbe is about the front porches and being able to entertain people. So I could see you actually doing something fun like that.
It is. I mean, on Easter Sunday, Casey Cooper, who is the lead guitarist for Katy Perry, sang "Amazing Grace" or played it from his front porch. And again, the people were in the trails. He put amplifiers out so you could be in the trails or anywhere on the streets and sidewalks in that area. And it was just amazing. We have a video of that.
It's beautiful.
That's great.
Yeah, and maybe we'll put that up on the podcast website.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's been a crazy time, and I definitely want to hear sort of like how you guys are handling it out there just with your family, how Outer is dealing with it. But I do want to know what happened with Shark Tank, because some of us may have watched it, but if you're listening to the podcast and hadn't heard of Outer before, we mentioned it, and you knew what had happened, but you couldn't tell us. So give us that.
Yeah. So when I had done the interview with you and Steve back in the fall, we were just a few weeks away from actually going live on ABC. And so the outcome of the show was that we had two offers. We had an offer from Mr. Wonderful, and we had an offer from Lori Grainer. And the funny thing is, when we were trying to guess who the offers were from, I won't say who it was, but we weren't thinking it was going to be from those two. So yes, we made a verbal offer with them, and we're still kind of just in discussions. As you know, like verbal is different than actual written. So like going through the due diligence takes quite a long time. Mm-hmm. In terms of the outcome, we knew that the most important thing that we cared about was just getting that extra exposure, because I don't know what the number of people that are actually watching the show is, but it's quite high, in the millions. And even more, a big part of how people watch TV is through over the top. So on demand, through Hulu, through CNBC, where you can basically watch it anytime and anywhere. As we were doing it, it was at the end of the year where we were coming upon Thanksgiving, the holidays. So we knew that the most important thing was, getting the seed of the idea planted in people's heads. And that happened. And as we were planning for this year, what I can tell you, this spring, we had planned for a certain amount of sales. And of course, the pandemic happened, and there was a lot of uncertainty. So come March leading up to the pandemic, our sales were on track. We were showing that we had forecast well. And then the pandemic hit. And then we all said, uh-oh, what's going on? We know that there's going to be something, and it's probably going to be, everything slowing down, as with many categories outside of your CPG categories like toilet paper, and your basic staples like flour. A lot of companies saw a drop in their sales. We saw a pause in our sales for about a week, and then they kicked back up. And March ended up being a really strong sales month for us, where we had our strongest day of sales, our strongest week of sales, our strongest month of sales, and our strongest quarter of sales. So it blew us beyond expectations. And in addition to that, as we are now in the middle of April, we are trying to renegotiate with our factory, our partner factory, on how we can actually increase our production by threefold.
That's amazing.
So where, we know that there are companies that are struggling for some reason, we are doing quite well. And, there's definitely a lot of assumptions that we're making about that. A big one is that we are all sheltering in place, which means we can't go anywhere. Spring break, we've had to cancel our plans. And then even more with this ongoing, we don't know when it's going to end. We know that schools are probably canceled for the rest of the year, and then up until the fall, that summer plans are probably on hold as well. So people that had plans are probably going to be doing things nearby their homes or in their homes. Mm-hmm. So with that, if you look at just what's happening in the industry, the companies that are doing well, other than like the grocery stores, are DIY. So like the Home Depots and the Lowe's. So people are investing in their homes. They're investing in making their spaces more comfortable. And then we are fortunate to be part of that. So people are investing in their backyards where they may not be able to go to parks because they're closed, that they're making the best of it and making their backyards as comfortable as they can. Yeah. So we've had quite a strong spring and continuing to hope that it will stay that way.
Yeah. What's happened with your showrooms? Because you have such an innovative model of no actual commercial retail space, but the showrooms are people's homes. So how have you pivoted in that space?
Yeah, it's that's a great question. And, I think, when we started the company, the interesting thing was we always knew that there was inefficiency in retail, in that once you actually begin to have brick and mortar stores, there's ongoing costs to it. Mm-hmm. And then the more you grow, the more bloated you get, the more you have in terms of trying to get to profitability. And so we know that there's always been this retail apocalypse that you see in the media. Yep. And I think with what's happening right now with non-essential stores being closed, it's just accelerated that. So even the profitable companies are going to be having a hard time because they have a lot of stores. They are forbearing on their monthly rents. Mm-hmm. So it just makes sense that while we saw retail changing, it's going to be changing faster than we thought. And not to say that we have the perfect model, but we do have a model where we are able to, have physical locations where we don't have the risk of having these ongoing costs. And in addition to that, we know that malls are closed, but if you need to, you can still go to your neighbor or, to see them. So it's easy to do that. But we have shifted where, for the time being, we are doing virtual visits. So this morning I was doing a virtual visit in my backyard, sharing what I can about our furniture, the details of it. So that's been another nice tailwind which we've had, which is we don't have the weight of retail stores right now, or we have the idea of physical locations, but not the weight of having to actually take care of the operating costs of those. But right now we are doing virtual showroom visits.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think today it's, we're recording this on April 15th. And so all of the retail came out and everything was down, considerably, I think close to 9%. And I haven't looked at that. Might be an aggregated number since, again, the Targets and the Walmarts were up. But I do think it's interesting to think about as our habits change, you already had a really cool idea of connecting with your neighbors, right? And going to the showroom near you. Now, as we have this whole different trend in how we shop, what's going to happen with, is this the nail in the coffin for the mall?
Yeah. If Amazon wasn't already the leader in e-commerce, I think they've proven that they will be with the amount of staff that they need to hire to fulfill demand. Mm-hmm. So where e-commerce was continuing to grow in terms of a share between physical stores and online, I think it's going to accelerate. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it's because that's the only way you can really shop these days, especially for non-essential items. Mm-hmm. I think I agree. It's interesting to see how retail is going to shift. And this is the catalyst that's going to make people figure out what they need to do to kind of follow with this trend of how consumers shop.
And of course, the next disruptor is going to be 3D printing. Are you looking into any of that technology for some of your furniture?
We aren't looking at that, but it's funny that you mentioned that. Because, while we are an outdoor furniture company, there's a couple things that have impacted our business, but everything from raw materials. But, we're doing our part. We know that there is definitely a gap in terms of protection for healthcare workers. And in doing so, we as a company, as a team, have come together to figure out what we can do, even though we're a furniture company, to be able to help in this. And I, for one, have purchased a sewing machine. I don't know how to sew. I'm learning now to just make cloth masks, not for the healthcare workers, but because we can protect at least our neighbors. Two, our head of engineering does have a 3D printer, and he's actually been printing 3D face shields and distributing, the pieces that he makes to doctors and healthcare workers in the local hospitals in LA. And then three, one of the things, and this doesn't have to do with 3D printing, but Jake Liu, my co-founder and the CEO of the company, has actually started a GoFundMe campaign. We raised $60,000 so far among the startup community to actually purchase masks for the healthcare, and we hit that number pretty quickly. But we're actually we've doubled that number to, I believe it's $150,000 that we're trying to raise. So, I think the point is that it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, we can all kind of do our part to protect these frontline workers. Mm-hmm. But with 3D printing, that is an interesting thing. Like there's a lot that you're seeing with how you can help with that. We haven't done much with that in terms of the development of our products, other than potentially thinking about prototyping.
Mm-hmm. What about your office? You guys are a little bit decentralized, right? But has anything changed? It sounds like your sales have been good, so you probably haven't had to furlough anybody. But have you, what is it like? I mean, we're all working from home. We're doing this on a Zoom call. What changes have you seen?
I have been remote since we started the company. I'm in San Francisco. Our headquarters are in Santa Monica. And then, probably the third week of March is when Governor Newsom announced that everyone in California is going to be sheltering at home. So we effectively shut down our office. We do have a distributed team. We do daily calls on Zoom. Mm-hmm. We do daily stand-ups. So we were already doing that in terms of partially probably for me because I am remote, that it really was a benefit for me. So we are continuing to do that. So not much has changed in terms of how we work. There are other things that do happen where we do have people that have to go in the office where we actually have to ship things off every few weeks. But in terms of efficiency, it seems to be like we haven't lost that much in efficiency other than those that have kids where you're trying to balance the stresses of, working. I have my daughter where she is now in choice time. And that choice times means she's on her tablet and she's probably on Netflix, wasting away her brain right now. But I'm sure as anyone that has a parent, we know that is kind of the last resort. But, as I'm doing this call, that was my last resort. So she doesn't bother us.
I like that you call it choice time.
So she can do anything. Okay. She can do whatever she wants, whether it's Legos, whether it's arts and crafts. But as of late, it seems to be she is really into the tablet, like most kids.
Yeah, no. It is. It's it is a common thing. I know that you've seen a big bump in traffic, and I know you're increasing your forecasts for April. For the virtual, are you guys looking for more showrooms? Are you looking for, as people come online, right, they can become a showroom, but are you guys still looking for more?
Yeah, we are. We know that what's happening right now is only temporary. We know that at some point, hopefully in not too distant future, that things will begin to ease. And, our sales have been coming from all over the country. There really isn't a really localized area. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's some areas where I don't think it's that warm yet, but people are already buying. And I think it's just anticipation of, going outside and getting that breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are continuing to accelerate that. We know that the more we have, the easier it is for other potential customers to be able to see, touch, and feel our product. And in addition to that, I was on a call for the past hour with a customer that's going to be a host. And, in the end, she said something like this. She said, I'm at heart an introvert, and I don't like talking to people. And we spent an hour talking, and she said, I've enjoyed this call and I could keep on going. And I just feel like, especially now, as we're doing kind of this social distancing, it is a way for people to connect virtually. But in the future, a lot of what we're doing is when we connect customers with hosts, it is like-minded people, just like we connected when Corinne connected me to you and Steve. Like, I think, Steve, one of the things that most resonated with me in something that I read was that you said something like, if we want to change the world, start in your backyard. And that was like, oh my God, I need to meet Steve. I need to meet Monica. And that's kind of how our relationship started. And, this is our second interview. And it really comes down to like shared interest, common interest, things that we all value. And that's kind of like what we hope, which is host connect with other customers and they have shared values. And it feels like a really authentic experience, even though it is, I wouldn't even call it transactional because they're not responsible for selling. They're just responsible for talking about a product, talking about like what they love about it, how they use it, maybe some things that they don't like about it. And that's what helps us with improving our product.
Yeah, I think, Steve and I have been talking a lot about, sharing, right? And that's communicating, as well as, this sort of loneliness epidemic that, even Jennifer Walsh, who you met, had dinner with us that night. I'm going to talk to her this afternoon, and she's like, oh, you get to see people. And it's like, she lives in New York. She sees people, but it's a different kind of seeing, right? You're being seen versus this autonomous, I'm walking down the street with people. And so that's, I think, probably a real benefit of sharing the product with people is that you're both being seen, and we need that,
We do. Yeah. So that is, like you said, that is a really important piece. And maybe I've mentioned in the past, but I live in a relatively dense area. I live in a row home where my next door neighbor's house is maybe a half of an inch away from mine. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know them that well. Mm-hmm. So and part of that is because I don't know what they care about, what's important to them. And I think what's interesting about, the day and age we're in right now, I can talk to anybody. It doesn't matter what their interests are. We all have a common thing that we can talk about. And unfortunately, it's not the most pleasant of topics, but it's this pandemic and how it's affecting all of us. So we all have this thing that doesn't matter who you're talking to, you can talk the same thing. And, to a lesser extent, it's the same thing with outdoors, like being outside, the importance of being outside. Once you know that there's something you have an interest to talk about, it's easy to actually start conversation.
Mm-hmm. And Steve, I know that or I should say, Terry, you had asked me, what's different at Serenbe? And I thought that was kind of a good question for Steve to answer.
Yeah.
Of what's changed, Steve, at Serenbe since, Terry was here?
Well, not as much as one would think is the curious part. Our restaurants are all still open, but it's only to go. So the chairs are either piled up or pushed together in a corner. People are really watching to be 10 feet away or 6 feet. And so you'll see one person enter and the other ones wait until they come out to get their food. Also has picked up the side window so people can not even can just pick up there and not even come in the restaurant. So that's adjustment. But the trails are more active than they've ever been. People are discovering new places that they hadn't had time to go to. And so in some ways, there's more activity out and about than there was before, which is kind of curious. But of course, everyone's adjusting to this new life. But we still have good food, we have fresh air, and we're still out and about. So that piece is very much the same. Our hospitality, of course, we've cut a lot of people that have had to be furloughed. So that's always difficult. But we are bringing several on, doing different things. We've got a whole group clearing trails in the woods that wouldn't have been cleared currently, and so. We're adjusting to it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was going to just kind of add on, when I went there, and just from what you said, it makes me think that the community at Serenbe is, slightly evolved. And I say that because, people go there have a conscious choice of why they go there. And why they go there is because there's the health and wellness, there's the agricultural, and there's the arts. And a lot of what I've been thinking about lately is how everyone's habits are now in flux, right? Like the routines that you had in the past are different now than they were before. Mm-hmm. And the things that, drew me to Serenbe as well as the people that live there are like things that to me have to do with the slow movement. Mm. Like it's not about going so fast, and it's not about like, sure, you care about being successful, but you care about gardening, you care about the arts, you care about like being healthy. And you look at what's happening today, and it's funny because Monica and I talked earlier. Monica, you mentioned like you are back, your space is very well weeded. Yeah. And you're thinking about like new things that you're going to plant. Like I'm working on art projects with my kids. We're picking up these habits that are really, to me, part of the slow movement. Mm. And it's like we've all been moving so fast in this world, and I'm sure it's much worse in kind of the denser cities, the metropolitan areas, the coastal cities. And while it's not good, it has made everyone in this country like pause and think about like maybe they have more time on their hands. I'm guessing they do. And yeah, sure, some people are watching way more of Netflix than they should, but others are actually doing things like there's a big rise in yeast and baking right now, mm-hmm. right? People are becoming bakers. They're picking up old habits that they loved. They're picking up new habits. But to me, they're all habits that have to do with the slow movement. And when I think about Serenbe, like that was what was really special. Like they're doing things that are really like something that is like this inner motivation. So that's what's really cool. So I'm actually not surprised to hear that things haven't changed that much.
And it's going to be interesting to see how we are permanently affected. Companies that resisted employees working remotely now have been mm-hmm. forced into it, and some are liking it. And so when you talk about more time, just imagine the time people have by not traveling in these freeways to these destinations. And so if we see that there's more quality time and possibly more productivity at the same time, mm-hmm. it could possibly permanently change our work habits. I think in addition to that, like there is the benefit to Mother Earth, which is there's less pollution in the world right now because nobody's driving. And with what you said, I think it is kind of like a catalyst to like we were moving this way with the distributed workforce, and now it's like we are forced to do it. And sure, like I know, like with my daughter doing homeschooling, it is not efficient. It is quite hard to do. So we're trying to figure out how to do it much better. I think in the next few months, the pace of innovation across the board is going to accelerate, and probably the pace of innovation with productivity tools in the workforce, you're going to see like move faster than anything. So I agree with you. And I actually do hope that, it gets better because it is better for the environment, and it is better. Like I think I've heard that the average worker is productive for 4 hours of their 8-hour workday. So if you're able to condense that to 4 hours in your home, you've got like, let's say the average drive time is 30 minutes to an hour across the country. Like all of that time saved, you can actually dedicate to other things that you care about. You can have a better quality of life. And in doing so, it makes you more productive in those 4 hours that you're working. And Terry, I wonder, some of these people that are seeing blue sky for the first time above their cities, will they realize that is possible, and will there be a bigger movement to really deal with some of the environmental issues?
Yeah, I think so. Like you can imagine, like it really comes to like a movement starts small and it goes big. So even like people in Asia, where we know there's a lot of pollution, like you said, in Beijing and Shanghai, where the particulates are lower than they ever been, like it's going to be them saying we need to figure out what we need to do. So yeah, I agree. Like there's lots of, while it's an unfortunate situation, I'm sure like, if we, look at the back half of this, it's a rebirth of how we think about things. And hopefully it means a rebirth in a way that we are smarter and we treat the earth better.
Well, I think that's a great place to end. That is wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to put up, is your GoFundMe, is that still going to be going on? Because we can put up a link if that, when this comes out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I will share that link with you.
Okay, great. And we can't wait to have you back. And come
I'm excited to come back. I'm excited to come back this time with my family because I think once I do, I'll convince my wife why we need to move there.
I think we would love that. It's virtual. You don't need to be in San Francisco.
I know.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That'd be great. We'd love it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Bye, Terry.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast and make sure to email your questions for Steve Nygren to stories@serenbe.com. You may even get to hear them on the podcast. More details about episodes and guests are available on our website, serenbestories.com.